Introduction to Artefacts in Your Classroom. This is a digital skills session looking at supporting social studies through the use of 3D models and a range of techniques which can be used within GLOW. My name is Jenny Mackay and I'm joined by my colleague Susan Stay. We are both Digital Skills Development Officers with Education Scotland. We're also joined by Lynn Robertson, who's the Senior Education Officer with responsibility for social studies at Education Scotland. Our session this afternoon is going to look at how 3D models can be used to support learning within the social studies and technologies curriculums. We're then going to look at what 3D models are and how we can use them to support learning and teaching, not just within social studies, but across the whole curriculum. We'll look at how you can use your own and additional models from museums, libraries and galleries across Scotland and beyond, and how you can import these into PowerPoint. We're then going to look at how we can use a range of different tools. These include Microsoft Paint, Sketchfab and Gravity Sketch. Finally, our next steps and further support session will show you where you can get professional learning support and materials, taking you on to learning about more ways you can use these within your classroom. So within the national context, there's a range of documentation shown on screen that may be of use to you. Within the technologies, these are just a flavour of how these models can link to the E's and O's that are available for social studies and technologies. Artefacts can support learning about people and place, as well as past societies. Within the technologies, the tools we're going to show you today can support digital literacy by raising awareness of copyright, factual information sources, as well as how to create interactive presentations, moving away from standard scripted or PowerPoint basic presentations for young people. We're also going to cover some of the craft and design experiences and outcomes, which allow young people to create models, to work through their thinking and to demonstrate understanding. These can be done as an independent activity or, in this case, to support learning about people, place and past. If you've not already seen it, can we take just a moment to also highlight what digital learning might look like? This booklet, which can be scanned through the QR code or is hyperlinked in this presentation, gives examples of how digital learning might look within a classroom environment or an early years setting. So if we think about 3D modelling and digital documentation skills, where are they used and how do people use them within the industry at the moment? Some examples of the use of these tools are within heritage. Museums and galleries may not be able to allow our young people to handle artefacts that are very delicate and really old. So they may create a representation of it which can be used in a handling box, for example. This reduces any damage to the artefact, but still increases understanding of the time or period that that artefact came from. Within manufacturing and fashion, mock-ups can be made to decide whether or not something would work in terms of a demographic who would buy the product, or in the case of manufacturing, whether something is viable. For example, is a car wind resistant? And several run-throughs and demonstrations can be done through simulations. Within arts and cultures, many museums and galleries have created tours of their establishments, as well as us all being familiar with Google Tours, allowing us to travel across the world without actually stepping foot from our house or school. Many artefacts within museums and galleries themselves have also been recorded, allowing us to interact with a fine piece of work which may not be accessible to our young learners. Within the film industry, green screen is also incorporated, combined with 3D modelling to make films come alive for our viewers. For example, within Harry Potter, several of the characters may not have been there, but we still see them live. A good example of this would be the use of green screen and modelling when looking at the recent Beauty and the Beast film. Tourism, we've covered a little bit through the arts and culture using virtual reality tours to understand the location of a place to see if it's where you want to travel to. And within architecture, town and planning and city development, it's common for companies or local authorities to create virtual worlds, allowing investors to see where and what a location or building might look like before even a brick is laid. With all of these skills being commonplace within industry now, it's important that we provide our young people with exposure to similar tools through products that we have available in order to ready them for the world of work in the future. So what is 3D modelling and how can we use it to support social studies? So the 3D models are a representation of an actual object. It's mathematical and it's created by exact points which are taken from a scan and are then meshed together to create the representation of a subject, a person, or even a location, as I've spoken about. It can be created by people known as 3D modelers. They're also known as 3D artists. So if you're talking to your young people and you're looking at developing the young workforce knowledge base, you can search both of those concepts and you can see how they're advertised and what the range of uses they have in industry. They're often these jobs are seen as advertised within films and gaming industry. So many games companies may use a 3D artist to give a realistic effect to the art screen. So when we've moved away from block-based games such as perhaps Minecraft, we've moved into more real life games. So the types of model that are available. 3D models are categorized into two main areas. There's a solid and a shell. Solid 3D models are used within engineering, maybe medical simulations as you see here, and they define the object, volume of the object. So for example, if we were to create a model of a rock, that rock would be defined by the whole volume that it holds. So it's a solid object. The shell is basically representing the surface and it's hollow. So essentially, if you think about creating the structure using maybe pipe cleaners or a frame of a chair and then draping fabric over it, that's essentially the model that you're creating. They're also known as boundary models. So there's a range of common software available. Some of it is vastly expensive, but for schools, there's a range of free products there. So some that we've listed here are Blender, Autodesk, Gravity Sketch, which is an app, and Microsoft Paint, but there are a huge range out there. It's also worth noting that if your school has a code club already up and running, there are some code club projects which use Blender, so it's worth looking, but that's an industry standard. Autodesk is really common in secondary CDT, design technology departments, so again, you can make links with this between schools and industry to see how these are being used in your community. So why are we looking at using it within social studies? So as I mentioned at the start, this allows using 3D models of items, allows us to interact with artefacts that might be too fragile for us to handle. So if we think about a Roman shoe from hundreds of years ago, it's too delicate, too expensive for us to touch in a classroom environment. It might be damaged. So we can create a model of it, we can print off that model, or we can interact with it online, and that allows us to have an understanding. It also removes accessibility barriers that may be in place, and it allows people to see artefacts without the need for travel. With the current situation, that's really beneficial, but it supports learning all the time. So if we think we want to teach young people about an item that might only be available in one museum or one gallery's collection, we don't necessarily have to all go on that trip to that place. The same applies for geographic locations. It allows us to see and be aware of things around us without having to travel. It increases prior knowledge before going on a trip, for example, and it can be used to refer when we're talking about things as a plenary. We've also got the ability to bring our objects to life using things like PowerPoint 3D animations, and we're going to come onto that in a second. But again, that allows increased engagement and supports our learners to get a real understanding of a process rather than looking at a static image. Okay, so we're going to leave this presentation and we'll move on to our PowerPoint that we're going to show you how to import a range of different tools. We're going to create a museum. So here's my virtual museum. And within it, I'm going to use a range of different items. This image here, you could get your young people to create that, but this one here I got from a website called Free Picks, and the link is in the notes section when you want to look at the presentation. So for example, we might be talking about animals. What you will find is the more that you have 3D objects within your PowerPoint, it makes it quite bulky. So if you have a little delay, please don't worry. So here I could be talking about this, the lives of a wasp, or we could be looking at mini beasts, and we could be discussing body parts of insects. So rather than having a static image where we label it, we might want to look at one. So here we can see this here. So all I've done here is import a 3D model of a wasp in this case, and just to give it a little bit of context, I've put some leaves in the background, so they're falling. So essentially I have two different 3D models here. You can see here I've got a pause button. That's because I've set my animation to work as an object which rotates. So if I simply click pause, I can pause it. I can spin it around, and as I'm spinning it, wings will move. We can talk about the different body parts. We can discuss how many legs it's got, the thorax, etc. And all of that is controlled by this icon in the center. This allows me to move the model in all directions. I can also rotate it, so when I import a model, I can choose what way I want it to appear to get the best view. And again, the same applies to the background. I can move that off, and I've got my leaves here, and again, I could have them falling in a different rotation. So that's one type of model. These are built in and available within PowerPoint, and I'll show you where to get them in just a second. You also get a range of additional models, for example, this one. So here I have the Earth, and you can see that it rotates around. If I pause it, I can spin the Earth around to get to the area that I want to look at. So we can move the Earth around, we can find our location, and so on. So how do I insert this? I simply go to the top of my menu, as you can see in this large icon here. I go to insert, and I insert a 3D model. When I've inserted the model, I'm given a range of other options. So let's have a go at that just now. So going up to the top of my page, next to the icon section, so in the shapes area of my menu bar, I simply select 3D model, and I'm given the choice. So I can import one from my device, or I can use the stock ones that Microsoft have provided. So we're just going to use the stock ones. And here we're going to look at volcano. So I now have a range of different items that it's decided might be suitable. So obviously we can discard the ones at the bottom, and the most accurate ones appear at the top. So there's a small icon of a running man. That gives me an indication as well that this is an animated model. So here it's looking at how volcanic islands appear throughout the ocean. So if I select that, I simply double click it and it will automatically import it. If I want to import more than one, I would simply select each one and click Insert at the bottom of the page. It sometimes takes a little while to think about importing its model. Perfect. So now I've imported my model. I'm not really happy with how big it is, so I'm just going to use my Edit buttons and I'm going to rotate it around. I don't necessarily want it to start like that, so I'm going to tilt so my learners get the full understanding of where the lava is flowing, how it's broken through the crust, and how it then comes up through the ocean floor. Again, you can see how powerful this would be for their understanding within geography of formation of these islands. Again, if I wanted to rotate my item, I simply click on the toggles button in the middle and I can move it. I can also use, when I'm in the 3D model button that appears at the top of my menu, I can also use the different views to get a core selection. So again, this one is showing it moving across, a cross section, and I can choose the one that best suits my needs. When I'm happy with that, I can also choose to animate it. So I may wish for my model to start in one position and move to another. So I'm just going to pause that there. Go to animation, oops, and I want it to swing round as it's doing it. So I'm going to have it going on a turntable model. So now I can see it rotating, and we can really see the crust underneath, the lava under the tectonic plate as it breaks through the mantle. So that can be used in a range of ways. If we go back into another blank model, if we wanted to choose a different model, for example, if we went up here and we search for Roman, I can look at different parts of architecture, and we can import these. So I can look at the gable end of a house, for example, select that. But if I wanted, as I said earlier, multiples, I would simply select the items that we want. One thing I would say is some of the items you may find don't quite suit your needs, but we're going to show you exactly where you can get additional models in a second. So we're going to take this part of a Roman house, and we're going to select Insert. So as you can see here, we can talk about how Romans might have constructed their homes, and we can talk about different features that they used. So I can pop this model on here, and we can then go out and investigate maybe if we're going on a trip, or if we're going on a virtual tour using headsets, or we can just look at the model. But I might want my model to rotate. So again, I can start it here, so we know that we're looking at this side, and then I'm going to go into 3D model to change my view. So I want it to start at that end this time. Go to animations, and this time I can choose any of these ones, but in the middle I'm just going to use the turntable one again. I can choose how quickly it turns, so I can speed that up or slow it down, and then I can simply, when I'm clicking on it, I can click enter and it will play for me. So again, you can see turntable makes it spin round just like a turntable would, but I can then change the settings and so on. And I've got that option in that window at the side if that's how you prefer to do it. So in here, timing, I can choose to have it starting on a click or starting when the slide opens. Again, for that sort of immediate impact with young people, children or young people, when you're working with them, you'll know how you want this object to interact with them. So as you can see here, using these items means that it's a lot more powerful than having a static image. It also enhances the understanding when they're going off to create their own models perhaps, and we're teaching something that isn't necessarily something they could pick up and use. So in the case of the volcano, we've looked at where we get images using the insert 3D model, but when I click that side arrow, you'll also notice that I can import models. So I'm going to show you where else you can get models. For example, this one. So this is a lantern, a Roman lantern, which my young people couldn't handle. It's too valuable and too fragile. However, we can see this, although I would have to say some museums do have their own 3D models, so you could handle those. But we can now see that we can rotate it, we can see the inlay, we can discuss who might have owned such a decorative lamp as this. And we can look all around it. We can compare and contrast between different models. We can look at current versus the artefact. So the site that we're going to show you is a site called Sketchfab. So for those of you who've not used it before, you can create a free account. Everything we're showing you today is totally free. There's no cost attached to it. You do have to create an account, so please, as with any product that we ever show you, please discuss this with your information security officer or your digital leads. But if you want to explore it, you can create your own account and just have a little look around. And that's what I've done here. There's no cost attached. So
We would also suggest that you use professional discretion to identify models that you feel are appropriate for use with the age and stage of your class.
When you go in, one thing I would say is not all of the models are from museums. A lot of them are, but not all of them are, or historical or architectural sites. So some of them are there from, like, for example, games modelling. So they might be based in history, but not necessarily accurate, historically accurate. So for example, if we look at Romans, we can see here I've got from a bust up here to coins to
an artist's depiction of a centurion. Some items might be directly from someone's interpretation. So again, professional judgment is needed.
Well, all of the models we're going to show you today are free, but you might notice that some of them have a paid for section. So not everything is free on here, but the vast majority are, and we're going to show you how you can use them. So you can search by model, but I tend to search by like an institution. So for example, I'm going to do historic environmental Scotland. So rather than looking up specific models, I can look up collections that are owned by users. So in this case, Historic Environmental Scotland. So it's just going to search, and I can scroll through until I see their logo, which is here. So you can see I can then choose to follow or unfollow them. So I'm going to follow just by clicking the box, and I can click on the title to take me into all of their items. So I can see at a glance they've got 349 models. They have arranged 45 different collections that they've grouped them in, so we know that they're factually accurate because they've come from Historic Environmental Scotland, but they've also grouped them into areas. So again, if we're looking at, we'll stick with Romans for just now, we know that we might want to look at shoes from that period of time, because we might be looking at how clothing has changed over the decades and years. But we can also look at it by location. So for example, if we go into here, we can select shoes. And we can see here, this is a lady's shoes from Bar Hill at the Antonine Wall, so we know it's Roman. And we can then choose, because we've selected that, all of the items from the Antonine Wall that they have laser scanned, and the digital documentation team at Historic Environment Scotland, who are amazing, they've captured all of these items and they've scanned them in, and then they're available for you to see here. So a couple of things, when you're using some of the items, you'll see here I can interact with them, so I can use them as a learning model, but I can't download them. So that's one thing just to be aware of. But what it does do is it gives me some information. It gives me a link to usually what institution it's been taken from. And I can use these to inform my understanding with my young people. So it becomes something they can interact with. So despite not being able to download it, you'll see here though that if I had VR headsets and I had the appropriate equipment, I could look at this in a VR viewer and we could use it that way. So although it's not able to be downloaded, I have a range of different ways that I can use it. What I can also do, if I go into my own account here, you'll see I've created 2 collections, and I will stick with the historical one. So I've created collections and I've got a different item. So here I've got a wine strainer, a Roman wine strainer. And we can see where it's come from. So it's come from the Hunt Museum, it's from Limerick. They've given me information, they've confirmed that it's Roman, and they've given me the dimensions. Again, I have that option to look at it in a VR viewer, but I can also use the model inspector. So if you've got maybe CAD, secondary students who are starting to use things like Autodesk, and you're looking at layering and you're maybe doing a joint interdisciplinary subject. But what we can also do is we can download the model, which I really love. So simply download it. It puts a file in your OneDrive or on your desktop or wherever you save it to. And then if I go back into my PowerPoint, you can see here, I've got this plinth here ready. I'm going to select 3D model and I'm going to choose one this time from my device. And I'm going to go to downloads. I've got my section here. I've got some artifacts. And here's my Roman strainer. So we're going to go to source. And here's my object file. So there's a range of different files that will allow you to be uploaded. An object file is a really standard one. So here's my item and we can look at it. So I could always put that up there as an introduction to my lesson. Oops. I could put that up there as an introduction to my lesson and we can have a look around, we can discuss it, what we think it might be used for, and then I can hyperlink it up and there's the link there. We could be taken straight back into, for example, here's Sketchfab and we can look at the actual item. As I mentioned, you can also go straight into here where it says for more information, click see here, and it'll take you to that website on that museum's page, which gives you additional information. So again, lots of museums have these collections available for you, and it's a really nice way to ensure that you're getting factually accurate data when you're asking young people to create their own presentations or research and incorporate these into their presentation. By doing that, we can also see a great deal more detail on it too. And as I mentioned earlier, having your own collection, having your own collections means that you can have your lessons kind of prepared in advance and you don't just have to look at objects or artifacts. There's entire rooms being laser scanned. So this one here, we can have a look at it. Oops, I want to move around just now. It's just loading. So we can see where it is, we can spin it around, we can interact with it, we can play what kind of room do we think it is. We know that this is a latrine, so my young people could do some research and find out the different cultures about latrines. And then we can find out, and what I love about this one is it's got some hot spots on it, so if you're familiar with ThingLink, very similar, and they are there for finding information out whilst learning what kind of room design they might have had, what kind of materials were used. So we can see that there's mosaic tiles, we could recreate some of the mosaic tiles, and we can do that for a range of buildings and rooms within buildings. We can also use the section at the bottom, which then takes us on a wee tour of it. And as I mentioned earlier, I can download that entire model. I can find out more information and I can see information about the model too. One of the other things is I can follow different organisations, as I said, directly in the model. So if you do come across one, you don't need to go to that homepage that I showed you earlier. You can simply follow that group by clicking the follow or unfollow button there. Really, really useful. For more senior pupils, for secondary, if you want to know about how the model is created and the mesh points on it, you can see all the information here. And as I said, more information on the model is also available for most of them. So all of these are free, the ones that we're showing you. Most of them can be downloaded. If they can't be downloaded, we're showing you how you can use them to build up your learners' understanding of people within the past. And we're then importing them into our PowerPoint. So if we just make a copy here, get rid of this, and all I would do there is click on Insert 3D from this device, and there's that object file, and it imports. So now my young people could interact in this. So before they even see that website, we could talk about what that might look like. You can see it doesn't have all of the detail. It doesn't have the render on it, and it doesn't have the mosaic detail. So again, we could really be discussing what kind of, what was the architecture, or we could be discussing what they think it might be used for. And I've got all of those features. So if I'm using a board, and maybe it's not working with the interactivity as well, if it's maybe an older board, I've got these buttons up here that allow me to rotate through my model if I can't use that icon here. Really, really simple. We've also got a pan and zoom. So if I select the pan and zoom option on that 3D model section, it allows me to use this grab handle to zoom in and zoom out to make the model a more appropriate size, or to zoom in on a specific bit of a detail. Just before we come off this section, we've looked at how we can import models from Microsoft using the Insert 3D model, and we've used their stock models, and we've also used some that we've imported from a range of different sites. And as I mentioned earlier rather, you don't have to just look at historical ones. There's a huge range of items out there that would support any subject. So if you're looking at how technologies change, for example, you can see I've got a range of different ways that media was recorded, and we could be talking about that. So all of these models are available, and we could be interacting with them in a range of ways. Okay. Some of the models have these information points on them, and these are similar to ThingLink, as I mentioned. So it's definitely a really nice way to bring something to life in a remote way. I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Susan, who's going to talk to you about a different way to create your own model this time, and then import it into PowerPoint through an app called Gravity Sketch, which is available for free on iPads and Apple devices.
Let's look at how we can design, create and build 3D models using an app called Gravity Sketch. Gravity Sketch is an app that's available on iOS devices, and it's free to download from the App Store. Within the application, you can learn how to use it. There's lots of short bite-sized tutorials to help you on your journey. You can also create your own models, and they are all saved into your gallery. You will see some selection here of the short tutorials that you can watch before you use the application. Once you're in the application, this is your edit mode. On the left-hand side, you will see your navigation. This is where you can create your 3D models. You can add shapes to your page. We have a line tool, and we have a filled line tool for creating shapes. We also have a symmetry tool for the line tool and a symmetry tool for the filled shape tool. We can choose the thickness of our line, and we can also change the shape of our line tool. This is where we can change the color, and this is where we can enable a grid. This is particularly useful if you want to create straight geometric shapes. Over here, this is where you can go into Edit 3D mode. With 3D mode, you can see your model coming to life in 3D, and you can rotate around it. You can also use this tool here to move the bed plate. This is really useful when positioning objects onto your model. At the bottom right, you can see there's an extra tool drawer. When you click on the tool drawer, this will take you to the Save and Export options. At the top is where you can create a new model. The next one is where you can save your models, and you can continue to go in and open them and edit them as and when required. They're all saved in your gallery. You can see your models in 2D and also augmented reality. You can also customize your settings. Please remember, if you are using an iPad with this app, you have the ability to screen record the process. This is particularly useful for capturing what's happening on the screen, capturing pupil voice, and then using that as evidence. So my project is Ancient Greece, and we've been focusing on ancient Greek pottery. We found out that the ancient Greeks made pots from clay. Large pots were used for storing and cooking food, but they also made decorative pots. So I'd like to replicate a pot using the Gravity Sketch app. So let's see how this can be achieved. I've now opened the Gravity Sketch app on my iPad. Down the left-hand navigation, I'm going to use the 3D tool to create the basic outline of my vase. I'm going to leave it on the colour yellow because the vase I researched did have a deep yellow colour. When you select the 3D shape, you can choose what kind of shape it will be. And you can see there's stars, triangles, hexagons, for example. But I'm going to leave it on circle for my vase. So now I'm going to create the basic outline of my vase. I'm happy with the shape of my vase. The next thing I'd like to do is add the two handles, which is typical when looking at Greek pottery. On the left-hand side, I'm going to use a line tool, but the symmetry line tool, and I'd like to choose the two lines so I can add the two handles at the same time. When I researched, most of the handles were black, so I'm going to choose a black colour for my handles. I'm also going to use this tool here to make my line tool slightly bigger, thicker. I'm happy with that. I now like to add a black lip around the top of my vase using the 3D tool and leaving it on circle and leaving it on black. I'm going to do the same around the bottom. There's a few decorative lines that I'm just going to add in to give my vase a bit of character. There was also a red line around the top, so I'm going to try and add a red line, a deep red line. And one around the bottom. There's also some decorative lines towards the bottom that I'm going to try and replicate. Again, using the symmetry line tool on the left hand side, but choosing more lines. And I'm going to change it to black. So I've got some lines towards the bottom. I'm now going to add some lines along the top as well. And possibly some dots as well. Just going by the vases I've been researching. The next thing I'd like to do is have a look at my design in 3D. So I'm going to select this 3D option at the top right hand side. From here, I can then just use my finger to see my vase in 3D. If I go back into edit mode, I now have some options from the toolbox on the right hand side. When I open it up, I would like to save my vase by selecting Save towards the top. I just have to give my vase a name. And then click the tick. And now my vase has been saved. So let's go into the Saved gallery on the right hand side. I can see my vase. I'm going to select the export icon at the bottom, and I'd like to save it into the Teams environment within Glow. I have the Teams app installed on my iPad and I'm already logged in. So when I scroll along the top navigation, I can see that Teams is already there. I would like to select my class so I can add my design to my class channel. So I select at the top right, start typing in either a person if I wanted to email it or the name of my team. So this is my class site and these are all my channels. And I would like to add my model to the STEM channel and then send at the top right. My model will then compress and be uploaded into the STEM channel on my team site. I am now in my team site. I can see the STEM channel on the left hand side and my vase has been uploaded into the conversation area. If I select the three dots, I can download my model. So I'm going to go to my 3D models select this device, go into my downloads, and I can see my Greek vase. Select Insert. My Greek vase is now in my PowerPoint presentation. I can move it on my page, and I can also add some animations. So if I go to animations at the top, I can select an arrive animation, and I can also select effect options. I can choose how long I'd like this animation to last. So I'm going to put it up to about 4 seconds. I can now click Preview on the left-hand side. If I select my object, 3D model appears along the top. And this is where I can add more animations if I want. For example, there's a pan and zoom facility. If I go back to animations, I can also add different animations on top of this. I particularly like the turntable effect. And you can see that that's lasting 20 seconds. So for example, if I go to slideshow mode, I can now see my 3D model rotating and going through the different animations. So we can see all around the model. And this is one I created earlier. So you can see I have my title and my information, my description about how I created this model and how I imported it into my PowerPoint. Another option for exporting your models from Gravity Sketch is to save them into Sketchfab. You do, however, need to create an account beforehand, so please make sure your Information Security Officer at your local authority is happy for this to happen. So again, I'm going to select Export from my gallery, and this time I want to save the file to my files in my iPad. Select a folder and then click Save. I am now logged into Sketchfab. I can select Upload from the top right-hand side, browse my files, click Browse again. I can see my Greek vase, uploads all the files attached to my model, and then I select Upload File at the bottom right-hand side. From here, I can add a description, categorise my model, and add some tags as well. I always select Free Download on the right-hand side. At the bottom right-hand side, I can now save and publish my latest model.
One of the other tools you may want to have a look at if you have a Windows 10 device is Paint 3D from Microsoft. So again, this is completely free, but you do need Windows 10 device, any device with Windows 10, and it's enabled. So you can find it through the search bar at the bottom or in the menu at the bottom left corner. It's just called Paint 3D, and its icon is this little multicolored paint drop. So as you'll see here, it has a range of brushes and tools that you'll be familiar with from a range of other products, any of the paint.net resources, Texties Paint, anything really, Draw on iPads, etc. You have a range of brush thicknesses. You can see how opaque or transparent the paint is, and you also have a range of colours, and you can use the droplet tool to get bespoke colours for matching up with other items that you might want to import. One of the coolest things that it has though is that it has this option of the finish that you can put on the paint. So if I was doing gold, which is what we're going to look at later, I can choose to have that as a dull metal gold or a polished metal. So if it was artefacts that my young people might have uncovered in an archaeological dig. It might be dull metal because it's been under the ground, but if it was polished up and it was maybe like a soldier's helmet, they could use polished metal. So that's a really nice, useful feature, again, to just bring home that learning context. Additionally, in here, we have a range of 2D tools, which are really useful if you've got younger learners that might need some support to create tool shapes. You've also got a nice range of these speech bubbles, which can be used to give feedback or for partner feedback, etc., on an image that's been created and allowing you to print it off as one single image. But what we're going to focus on is 3D at the moment. So, as Susan showed you with the gravity sketch, the 3D shape, any app that allows you to draw, means that our learners can recreate these artefacts and models to support understanding social subjects, as well as a range of other curricular areas. So in here, we've got a range of the tools, just like Susan showed you earlier. We've got the paint tool, we've got this one which gives it more of a rounded finish, and then we've got these ones which are quite sort of blunt. So if you're doing like a brick, you might use this sharp edge one. If we were doing something soft like a butterfly, we could use this soft edge tool. So if I demonstrate that just now, I could basically use my tool. I can choose the paint colour that I want it to be. So if we go for this, I can't draw. Susan's really good at drawing. I'm not good at drawing. So I'm going to just draw the shape in the centre. So that's going to be the body. And then I am going to draw another shape over here. And this is going to be the wings. So you can see there, it's not joined up because what I need to do is join the line all the way back up to the top. So take it from the top. Oops. And then what I can do is I can join these. So in the right hand side of my screen, I've got a range of tools. So obviously I could do control and click on all the items, but I've got this really handy select all or multi-select. So for here, we've only got 2 items. So we're going to select them all and group them. If I had lots of little bits I wanted to move all at once, for example, flowers or clouds, I could use the multi-select to choose these more random items. I've also got, so I'm going to put the other wing on here. So I'm just going to go back on to my paint tool and I'm going to draw this up here. Obviously butterflies should be symmetrical, but we'll just go with it. And this time I'm going to use my select all again and I'm going to group them. So now you can see I've drawn on my shape and I've got my butterfly, but I want to bring it to life. And I can do that by rotating it, and that allows it to bring it to life. What I want to show you though is a couple of other features in here. So we've got the 3D view up at the top, and we can also put it into mixed reality. So that allows my young people to create something and then have it in the room. So an example would be if they created a piece of furniture from medieval time, or a piece of architecture, for example, Forth Bridges, and they redesigned it and they put it into their classroom, they could see it and they could view it through that mixed reality viewer. So that's really useful if you're doing subjects around design technology, for example, and you want them to design a piece of furniture. That piece of furniture can be live in their classroom with them and they can see what it looks like. A little bit like if you use any of the furniture shopping apps yourselves and you can put it into your room to see if you like it. The other option we've got up in the top right corner is the redo and undo buttons. We've also got this history button, which I really like. So this allows me to do 3 things. One is I can go back through time by tapping the line, and I can show the different stages that my drawing went through to become the model that it is. I can also click this record on or off button, and that records my whole process. And then I can see this button here, which is not highlighted because we're not currently recording, but we can export that as a video, and that can go straight onto my desktop or into my OneDrive. We can also import items using the 3D library, just as I showed you with PowerPoint. But what we can also do is use an image that we might have to create a 3D model. So at the top right of my screen, using the menu option, I'm going to either insert or open an existing project, or as I said, insert a file my young people may have already created. So in this case, it's a Roman helmet. What we can then do is ask them to create a 3D model based on that image. So what we would do is break it into the component parts. So I've used the paint, the brushes here, and I've filled it with paint to make it clearer. I'm then going to use the 3D Doodle tool, and I'm going to break it up into components to make our helmet. So first of all, we want the bristles along the top. So all I'm going to do is follow the line that I've got here that's quite thick. I use my finger, mouse, or touchpad to control it. If I get to a straight line, I can just go to the end of the straight line, so lift up, double tap, and my line will join. I can then use my pen, mouse, or cursor to slide back and join up my lines until I get back to that home dot. So you can see now I've got this bristle shape at the top. I can then give it a colour, so I'm going to go red as I had there, and I don't want it to be metal, I want it to be kind of glossy and bright. Again, I could add a colour or I could take a sample. When I'm happy with that, I'm going to choose a different part and I'm going to draw that. So this time we're going to just draw the rest of the helmet in one go. So I'm going to start at the edge of the red, go down, follow the line around, go up, and because it's a straight line, go to the end, double tap. I can repeat that anytime I get to these straighter areas. So now I've got the core shape of the helmet, but it's not right, so I want it to be this golden colour, and again, like I was talking about earlier, I want it to have this sort of metallic finish. So when I'm happy with that, I click OK, and I've now got two shapes that are drawn together. Now, as I said, not good at art, but you get the idea. What I'm then going to do is do select all, and I'm going to group them together. So when they move as one item. So now I've got this helmet. But as you can see here, nobody's head is that thin. So we're going to stretch it out. So we're going to turn it on its side, and we're going to just use our editing dots to turn it. So now I've got a Roman helmet that my young people could use. They could import it into their presentation. They could add it as an object. They could print it off if you have access to a 3D printer through the Slick Library project or your local authority, or even your secondary or cluster may have one available that you can use. What I can then do is I can choose to remove my canvas. So if I, go into select mode, take my object, and we just want to get rid of that. Choose that, get rid of the background, and now I have my straightforward, I have my helmet there that I can choose. And again, I've got my mixed reality and my 3D view, which I can choose to have. I can also use my canvas options and make the background transparent. So that means that when I do take it onto my PowerPoint, I'm able to simply see the helmet and not see that white background. To do that, all I would do is go back to my menu option, click Save As, and we could save it in a range of ways. So we could save it as a 3D project, come back and finish later on, save it as an image that I can print off and put it on the wall, or save it as a 3D object. So if I save it as a 3D object, that allows me to open my PowerPoint and import it straight into there. You'll see I've also got this option to save as a video, and that would show me the process. So if I wanted to understand the process my learners had gone through, and again, if they wanted to explain the process they'd gone through, we've got that option to save it as a video file too. So as we've mentioned, there are a range of ways in which you can get additional help, support and advice moving forward from this afternoon's session. We would like to highlight the professional learning communities which are available in Glow. These can be accessed through the tile on the National Launchpad. That's the launchpad with the flag at the bottom at the left-hand side of your device. Within the professional learning communities, there is a specific social studies one with a range of information and resources, and you can access it by scanning that QR code if you have a Glow account. Alternatively, the link is embedded in this presentation. Likewise, there's a technologies community one. So the National Technology Community has a range of resources that support learning and teaching, including some 3D models and guides on how some of the Forth bridges were captured using modelling and scanning. So that is available on there, and that can be found at the by clicking the link in the presentation in the file space or scanning that code. We would always highlight DigiLearn Scott as a place to find webinars such as this one. It's also got a range of different resources, and we would love to hear how you've used these resources in the sharing practice space. So please do check out DigiLearn Scott if you haven't already. And where else you can get information. So Sketchfab has an education area. There's information can be found through the link on this slide. It's definitely worth having a look at Sketchfab for your own use to see if it is of use, see what models would suit the learning and teaching within your classroom, and how you could make use of these if you so wish. As with any product that we're showing you though, and as we mentioned earlier, please always speak to your digital leads or information security officer if you are planning on using any product with your class. Susan covered Gravity Sketch and the amazing ways that you can get your learners to recreate their own models within that using Apple devices, so please check that out there. As you see there, it's a free app. And we've also covered a little bit around Paint 3D and the ways that you can use that using their built-in model, the AR features that are built in, as well as creating your own models. There is help and support in Microsoft's Education Centre, which has its own course on PowerPoint 3D models. So you can see Paint 3D here, search for that and it will come up for you in the Microsoft Educator community, and you can use your Glow account to register if you want to do that. There's a wide range of digital professional learning available in there, and it's all free. There's also some handy guides, templates and resources for 3D modelling within the Microsoft site, and that again is hyperlinked in this document. And there's a section on getting creative with 3D models in PowerPoint, which can be found through the QR code on the page. We've also got links to additional models. So as we've shown you there, we've got lots of models that are available from Scottish institutions, wider afield, England and beyond. But we've also got organisations such as Smithsonian who've catalogued their collections with 3D models, and you can use these to inform learning and teaching in your classroom. If you haven't already had a look at the Smithsonian 3D digitisation collections, they are phenomenal. Everything from rock and roll boots to spaceships to like all sorts. So it's really worth a check out. Finally, we'd just like to quickly highlight, if you do have different resources in your school, such as AR kits and things, you may also want to have a little look at the Google Arts and Cultures section of their site. They have a range of materials. You should always check anything before you use it with your class for appropriateness. But there's a range of materials on artwork. There's a whole ways of touring museums remotely with VR sets. You can also tour a range of different sites and places around the world. A range of artworks have also been captured that you can use in VR. Finally, that leaves us to say thank you very much from both Susan and myself and the DigiLearn Scott team, and thank you to Lynn for joining us and co-presenting this with us today. Our Twitter handles are on there. Please do get in touch with us if you would like to share how you're doing anything or if you've got any questions. Thank you for your time.